Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to my channel. I am Alika, and can y'all believe the year's almost over? Like, it's crazy. It seems like we flew through 2024, and we're at the time of the year where we're getting our year-end books, our story grab wrap-ups, Spotify wrapped, all the things. So, you know what that means. That means that it is time for me to start making some wrap-up videos, some of my videos about my favorites of the year. This video specifically is about my most read authors this year and then my favorite book that I read by them this year. So, of course, I use Storygraph to track my reading. So, they gave me this wonderful little graphic that let me know who my most read authors were this year. And as you can see, Aubrey Penn, Kimberly Brown, and Dandridge Monroe were my top three. Aubrey Penn was my top last year, but I will say there was a significant decrease in the amount of her books I read this year versus last year. Last year, I think I ended up reading like 43 AP books, whereas this year, at the time of recording, I had read 20. So yeah, there's been there's been some changes in my reading habits this year, but that's another video for another day. So while we're on the topic of AP, she had two traditional releases this year. I loved both of them. But honestly, truly, my favorite book that she put out this year was Maybe for the Summer. First of all, can we get into the cover of this book? Like, do we see how gorgeous that is? And she's a thickie. Like, this book is super thick. I want to say it ended up being like, yeah, over 500 pages in paperback. What was the total? Total was 548 pages is what it turned out to be in a paperback. And when I say this story touched my soul, like I was sitting looking at walls for days after reading this. Like I could not pick up another book. It was fantastic. It follows Lucci and Daisha. Lucci is a rapper and Daisha is an executive assistant. She ends up getting fired from her job on some absolute bull. Like when I say bull, I mean it's complete and utter bull. And so she ends up having a one night stand with Lucci, and then they end up having to work together. So it's a workplace romance, it's a rapper romance, like it's all the things. I absolutely adore this book. If you haven't read it, definitely check it out. It is on KU. It's also available on AP's site. Again, I'll have it linked to my Amazon storefront in in the description of this video. Next up was Kimberly Brown. I got into her catalog heavy this year, okay? Like super heavy. And what can I say? I love a Kimberly Brown book. It's going to pull all of the emotions out of you. It's one of those that's going to break you apart and then put you together again. And of course, my favorite book by her that I read this year was I Could Fall in Love. Is she small? Yes, but she packs a punch, okay? We have a marriage of convenience, which is my favorite trope. And there's so much emotion in this book. This one brought me to tears. It really and truly brought me to tears, but it's such a good story. And I almost don't want to tell y'all too much about this book just because, like, it's one of those stories that you really, really have to read. And there's so much that happens that I don't want to spoil it at all. So, yeah, for sure, if you have not checked out I Could Fall in Love, it's one of her earlier books. So I don't really see too many people talking about it online anymore. But definitely go check it out if you have not already. And last but certainly not least is Dandridge Monroe. When I say I was in that lady's catalog heavy this year, heavy, okay? Now, what I will say is her books are all interconnected. And I mean, the series are interconnected to each other. It's some serious, serious world building going on over there, okay? But I jump around in her catalog. I don't read it in the reading order it's supposed to be in. So I've jumped from series to series, people to people, and I have not finished a single series of hers because I'd be all over the place. And with that being said, the book that I loved that I read the most by her this year, Defender's Destiny. Now, if you've seen my 10 Before the End video, this book was on that list because I read around this book in this series in particular because I just knew it had some sad girl elements to it and it was really going to put me down in my feels. And it did. It definitely did. I cried, like, was in her DMs crying, like, oh my God, why would you have me read this? This book really tore at my soul, tore me up. But it's such a good story. Now, what I will say is, even though her series are interconnected and can be read as standalones, I would not advise reading this until after you read Asylum, which is in one of her other series. It's in the Orphan series. It's book 2 in the Orphan series. I would not read this until you read Asylum, but this book was so good. It's one of those where, like, you have to go through all of the bad to get to the good, and the good at the end is just so worth it. Like, I 50%, like the first 50% of this book is a sad girl read. Like, you're sad, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait for them to get back together, to get to the happy. But it's such a beautiful journey, such a beautiful story, and I absolutely love it and recommend it wholeheartedly. Now, if you have not read any of these authors, I would love to know so I can tell you where I would suggest you start in the catalog. But those have been my most read authors for this year and the books that I love by them. Bye.